Hi guys, and welcome back to Manch Talk. I'm Carla Garrick, your host. Today is Wednesday, January 29th, I believe, and I'm happy to be back here. We got some snow overnight. I just got back from a long hike in the woods, as I like to do, and today is a big day. Today is the hearings with the Financial Committee up in D.C. with Bobby Kennedy, with RFK, and so I will be focusing most of the show on that. I will candidly tell everyone I did do a lot of show prep, and then I dropped it on the way to the car, and my pages aren't numbered, so there is madness before us, but everyone who knows me knows I like to roll with the punches, so we are just gonna make it work today. I wanted to start with just some quick libertarian news for people who follow me for what's up in the libertarian world. I saw an announcement recently by Angela McArdle, who is the current CEO, leader, president, I don't know what they call the title of the Libertarian Party, let's say chair, head honcho, top lady, top boss, boss lady. And she just recently announced that she will be stepping down. So I anticipate there's going to be a giant power struggle, as always happens. Power hates a vacuum or vacuum something. I should vacuum my house. I should also warn everyone I'm on day 3 of a fast. So regardless of what happened with my show prep, there's that added element of who knows what's about to happen. Anyway, Angela did some amazing things as LP, but she has also, been criticized for a lot of stuff. So I know here in New Hampshire, the New Hampshire Libertarian Party convention will be coming up probably in the next month or so. And I'm hearing all kinds of ructions as to, which way it's going to go. So I'll start to keep an eye on that and report back here to you guys. I also wanted to give a shout out to Granite Grok. I am now syndicated on Granite Grok Friday nights at 8 p.m. They have been putting out my videos. So if you like what you see, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel, Carla Garrick TV. And of course, if you are a supporter of Granite Grok, leave a comment, say something nice, let them know that you appreciate the content that I am creating. So as I mentioned, today I want to talk about Bobby Kennedy and his hearings, sort of where we are in the landscape of that, and to bring you up to date. Here's the shortest version. So Robert Kennedy is, according to the establishment, a little out there. Now, as someone who's also regarded that way, I have a lot of empathy for him. But the reality is, he's a Kennedy. He went to Harvard. He has a law degree. I think he has a PhD in something. He has been a successful lawyer for various decades. You can't, by the way, just practice law and make up quackery and, be too wacky and insane and out there in order to win law cases. There is some relative sense of rationality and logic still involved, although I will quibble about that as well. So when you hear all these crazy things about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think you should stop and just kind of be like, what's up? So what is up is actually that most of the people who don't like him, so these are sort of the top criticisms that you'll hear against Bobby. Now, actually, by way of backstory, Robert Kennedy Jr. came to PorcFest in 2023 on the invitation of the organizers of PorcFest. And it caused a lot of drama at our event because he asked for a gun-free zone in order to do his talk. And, our 2A people were pretty butthurt about that. But the reality was we made it work. So what happened was RFK came, the room he spoke in, which was a giant pavilion at Rogers Campground in Lancaster. And there were metal detectors to get in. There were lines out the door. It was the biggest PorcFest we'd ever had. He was insanely popular. People came to really hear him speak. So I think there is this element that he is resonating with more people. And of course, That is why the establishment is threatened by him as well. So we had the gun-free zone, which was a small part of PorcFest for those hours. I always said I think it is a reasonable request. People often ask me, they're like, Carla, who else are you going to give a gun-free zone to? Of course, the issue as well, just let's be real clear, is property rights mean that whoever owns the property or has rented the property and has it under clear authority and under a contract gets to decide what they do with the property. So even though people were upset, it worked out. They actually had a gun building class right across the field. So everyone kind of got to do their thing. But I wouldn't give a gun-free zone to just anyone, but I do think it's reasonable to meet your guests where they are. You know, not everyone has the same appetite for risk. And if you, I don't know, have worldwide name recognition, so that's Kennedy, Trump, Elon Musk, and maybe Paris Hilton, and if you have had two of your previous direct family members assassinated, then I think it's reasonable to ask for a gun-free zone at PorcFest. So that's my answer to that. So the criticism against Bobby, who I met personally, I like to look someone in the eyes and be like, hey, what's up here? Are you an honorable person? And the vibes I get from him is, yes, he's an honorable person. So I thought we could play this just short little clip. It's like 30 seconds long that started his meeting this morning, right? So now he's at the Senate. They're all grilling him. I'll fill you guys in on what Maggie Hassan from New Hampshire had to say to him in a hot second. But first, let's take a look at this clip.
Problems in this country that we must face honestly. And the first thing I've done every morning for the past 20 years is to get on my knees and pray to God that he would put me in a position to end the chronic disease epidemic and to help America's children. That's why I'm so grateful to President Trump for the opportunity to sit before you today and seek your support and partnership.
So there we go, right? So he just, I know, it's hard to listen to him. I have a hard time with it too. But you know what? Everyone used to ride out with NPR's Diane Rehm, who sounded like that. So if we could do it on a radio show where literally your only qualification should be you sound good, then we could probably write it out for someone who is going to fix our sick children problem. So the reason I wanted to play that clip, right, is Bobby's had a pretty wild life, right? He was a drug addict at one stage. I think he was a heroin addict. But he talks quite candidly about, you know, finding God, finding religion again, and then feeling called to this role. And I have to say, that resonates with me as well. The healthier I've become, the more I do see that government to me actually looks a little evil, because a lot of the good people who perhaps choose to keep their spirituality private and internal and something that's between you and your maker, you know, it's hard to kind of come out and to say these things. So I really admired that he started the meeting with, I feel like I've been called by God to do this. So kudos for that. I actually was asked by the Maha administration if I would go to DC, and you know, in my long and illustrious careers, I have been approached over the years for my various talents. And I have to say I was both extremely flattered, had a moment of, would I want to do this, right? My entire thing is about New Hampshire, building out New Hampshire, building localism, making where we live the best it could be. So would I want to go to DC? Well, I tried something new. Instead of spending countless hours proing and conning and mulling and ruminating and trying to be like, what is the exact right decision? How can I sort of predict my own future? I did a simple thing. I said yes And then I said, let's see what happens. And that was literally the conversation with my husband. I told him, they've asked, what does he think? I was like, I would definitely want to be back in New Hampshire for 3 days, 3 consecutive days. That was sort of one of my conditions. And so I said yes. And it was for a role at the Associate Department of Associate Public Affairs or something. Anyway, under the actual HHS, there are like 13 other departments, some of which you've never even heard of. So it was one of those. And basically it was a propaganda role. So helping to communicate the ideas to people in a cogent way. Why would that be important? And I like to think I would only do ethical propaganda, by which I mean I would speak the truth. This office would actually also have done all the FOIA requests and on the request of the person who brought me in. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. We got sort of kept from the start. Not surprising. Maybe they'll bring me in later. But the FOIA requests, I mean, our attitude was, all right, so we just grant them all, right? The more open government is, the quicker and easier we can get to the bottom of stuff. Why don't we know what is going on in the world? Why don't we know whether vaccines are safe or not? Why is there all this noise and misunderstanding and disinformation and misinformation and whatnot? I will say this also, I found a study yesterday, which I'll bring in next week then, that actually conclusively finds that the public health policies from 2000 on have on net made people less healthy. That is a problem, and that is based, that study was based on disinformation spread by governments. So we have a problem. So why don't they like Bobby? They don't like Bobby because of his anti-vaccine stance. They claim he lacks qualifications, but I've been to DC. They all lack qualifications. They don't like his conspiracy theories and misinformation that he spreads, by which they mean they don't like an alternative narrative that might make you think about things in a questioning way. So those were the top ones. I guess they also are concerned that he would be highly polarizing. Now, I found that one interesting because here's the magic that we somehow managed to pull off in this election. We got some legitimate outsiders with actual networks who do seem to at least understand the problems we're grappling with, including issues with sound money, our national debt, why is everyone sick, why is government too big, how inefficient is it truly, and it turns out it's like billions and billions, if not trillions and trillions. In fact, it is trillions and trillions of dollars. So we have these outsiders, but Trump is sort of this one flavor, kind of, let's say, the MAGA flavor, right? Make America great again. We're in the new century. We're in the golden age. Love it. Sounds great. Over here we have Bobby Kennedy, right? Old school Democrat. And the Democrats are like, we hate him because he is going against statism. But it's like, guys, this statism is rotten. If you have public health policies that are making everyone sicker, then you actually have to fix the problem. And I believe Bobby's been called to do that. And I hope he's going to get appointed. So Maggie Hassan had her little grandstanding moment there. And I have to say, these hearings, I was watching them live, right before I was coming out. And it's not even really a confirmation hearing anymore. There really isn't any kind of exchange of ideas. No one's listening to each other. Everyone's just there kind of being like, I'm going to say my bit, right? So Maggie thought she was being, sorry, I was going to comment on our looks, which is not appropriate. Why would I even do that? So she was, complaining about his radical conspiracy radical conspiracy theories that he believes in. And then she attacked him, obviously, on his vaccine public health positions. She went into this little side note about her dad being a pediatrician and how her dad claims that, the polio virus saved everyone from death. I would also like to remind people, when you hear these arguments and you're hearing anchors that are just people kind of saying things like, oh, we eradicated polio. Okay. Or measles. Measles is actually a better example. So I think at the height of the measles pandemics, back in the 60s, I suppose, I think maybe like 500 kids died of measles. Okay, that's 500 kids. You don't want someone's kid to die of measles. That would be an awful thing to do. But my question is, how many children are dying of SIDS every year, sudden infant death syndrome? Well, I'll tell you this, enough of it so that they changed the definition to SIUD. I don't remember what it stands for, but I was doing some research and I was like, every time they change a word, they're hiding stuff so that you can't collectively, or with the AI tools that we now have at our disposal, it's very hard to build those linear lines. So when you see names that change, it's usually a tell that there's something rotten in that body of work. And I know for a fact with SIDS, there's something rotten. And I will tell you why I know that. Because when I was growing up in South Africa, in 86 was when SIDS suddenly appeared. You know what else appeared in 86? The vaccine schedule, the mandated vaccine schedules that say that vaccine manufacturers are not liable for their products. Now, I want to ask you something. If a car manufacturer should be liable for, or electronics, let's say it's something with electronics, has to stand behind their product and say, okay, we think it's safe, it's not going to explode on your lap, it's probably not going to, start ticking in the middle of the night, whatever, right? So we expect that. We expect the products we pay for to work. Vaccine manufacturers have absolute liability waivers. They have liability protection. They are not on the hook. Now, what do you think that incentive is? If no one's holding your feet to the fire and everyone's lying about what's happening, but we can all for ourselves see people getting fatter and fatter, sicker and sicker, sadder and sadder, then you have to ask yourself, what is going on? So Hassan goes off on this little grandstanding. I don't think she actually even really asked him a question. And I think when he started to respond, he couldn't even get a word in edgewise. But the things I actually noticed about the way she was speaking, and this is my propaganda training, right? And maybe I should clarify for people who don't understand this. My dad was in the Foreign Service during the apartheid regime. So his last posting was ambassadorship in Rio. So, and my mother worked for the press secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs. So I would say between the two of them, I was well trained in the art of the B and the S, shall we say. And I remember just as a child, like hearing them, like my dad would write press things or, write a speech, and my mom would look it over. They'd talk about which word to use, why to use that word, right? What is more persuasive, what is more, and if you're a diplomat, so this is the way my dad explained it to me back in the day, is I was like, Daddy, what's a diplomat? And he said, Carla, it is someone who can tell you to go to hell in such a way that you look forward to it. So, words, how you communicate, all of that is part of it. So what I picked up when Hassan was talking is she kept using the term rigorous studies. So this somehow tricks your brain to be like, oh, they must be saying what they're saying must be true, right? Like some guy came in with a stack of 40 studies. Now here's the honest truth. For every 40 studies that someone could slam at you here, I can find you 40 studies that I could slam at you here that literally say the opposite of it. We are in the era of WTF is going on, right? So she's like, rigorous studies. And then she used the term many. Like, I think she actually said it that many times. I didn't go back and count. But I was shocked. And I was like, see, now that's a neural manipulation, right? If you're a good communicator, you have these tools that you use to manipulate your audience. So those things about her testimony really stood out to me, or her grilling, I guess is the best word. But then she got fixated on this last issue, which was about abortion. And Robert Kennedy is pro-choice, I believe. Trump, if I remember correctly, is pro-life. But, you know, he walks that fine line, which most of us do, right? Where it's like, I think it's wrong. I would never do it. But, you know, if you want to murder your baby, I judge you harshly. But, you know, should I stop you? A moral argument could be, yes, we should. That, of course, is what people from the church do. But I believe the government is always evil. So I don't think you can solve the problems there. I think you have to solve it within yourself, right? So Hassan was like, oh, do you stand for... So she starts with the whole, we should have vaccines and mandates and the vaccine schedule and anti-vaxxer. And then she flips without even a remote amount of self-thought or reflection. She starts in on the abortion issue, and she's like, she has this huge son, and she's like, you know, no one should stand between, everyone should stand for bodily autonomy, and no one should stand between a doctor and their patient, which I agree with. But if we're going to say that for killing babies, then we gotta say it for wearing masks and getting jabs too. You don't get like the freedom to make this decision over here, which is a much more tragic and life-destroying decision, then be like, oh no, but see, when I'm scared, then I want you to wear a mask and I do suddenly own your body over here. Do you guys see how that's very logically inconsistent? So either we have to say it is not your body and not your choice, in which case you're owned by the state, and then you should cop to that, become a full slave, sign the social contract, and move on with your life. But for those of us who actually want to have self-ownership and want to live as free humans, then your body, your choice does make sense. But then that, as a rule, applies to everything. There aren't exceptions for public health. Public health is a literal oxymoron. Because public, what is that? Big group of people that we could just lie about and then everyone will just eat that nonsense. Health is literally the state of your physical being, of your physical body. So how can you have collectivized individualism that forces you to do things? It's bananas. It's not the way the world works. It's not the way the world should work. And I am very, very hopeful that Bobby is going to get in there and he is going to help rectify some wrongs. Now, when I was just leaving, I heard the talking heads on the TV, and I don't even know which station I was on, but I heard them say they think he is going to get approved. Now, that would make my heart sing. I think that would be a step in the right direction. I think we have to be pulling off Band-Aids left and right. I think the more aggressive they can go in. I don't think these executive orders of Trump are necessarily 100% technically constitutional, which is a fight the libertarians have had with the GOP over the years. I remember back 20 years ago, we were like, these are going to start to be abused. And of course, now they are. One man's abuse is another man's progress. So maybe we're just there. But what I am hopeful for is that this sort of dream team, this like left-right energy, right, of the outsiders coming in and just saying enough is enough. We need to try radical things because what we are doing is not working. And if they can do it, the changes will be astronomical. And how do I know? Because history tells us this. When Margaret Thatcher became prime minister, 90% of the UK economy was nationalized. And she sort of mimicking, although I think she was a student of a lot of philosophers, libertarian philosophers, Milton Friedman, maybe, some of the others. She was sort of mimicking what Reagan was doing in the States at the time. But if you look closely, Reagan also grew government. Shh. But Maggie actually did cut. And all the economic growth that we saw in the UK over those years was as a result of that. So I'm running out of time here. I didn't even get to say any of these things. I will put them in order, and then perhaps we will discuss them next week. I did want to let you know a few things. This is a great book by Thomas E. Woods, Nullification, if you are interested in what the correct role of the federal government should be. It is, it sort of talks about how the federal government how to resist federal tyranny in this day and age. It's a little older. And then this is just, of course, a classic that everyone should read. This is 1984 by George Orwell. I am very proud of myself that one of my court cases on all the pleadings out there of all my activism over the years, actually in one of the pleadings, there is a reference to my protest I did at at City Hall in Manchester when they were when they were reducing our privacy and doing more surveillance. That was called 1984 is not an instruction manual. So it's not an instruction manual. These terms are ironic, but I will leave you with this. The book is famous for this is kind of how they mind controlled their populace in the book, right? War is peace. Freedom is slavery, and Big Brother is watching. So I think we need to start to delve into what this technocracy might look like, because we should probably be keeping an eye on that too. So for the most part, good news coming out of the federal government. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But as that happens, we got to keep an eye on it so that we don't end up enslaving ourselves in entirely new and fascinating ways. That's all I've got for this week, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. I will see you back here again next week.